Hello, welcome to training section 1. Let me share the lecture content now. So let me share the tab. So I'll dim off the lights. We can see a lecture slide properly. So what we're discussing this week will be computer memory, data storage, RAM, caches and storage, and what's the technology of digital media solutions. So that's the topic we'll cover. What is cache memory? What's RAM? What's volatile memory? And the storage hierarchy. What's the SSD and flash memory? What is hard disk drive and magnetic storage? What's optical storage? What is RAM versus caches versus what's the normal storage? The simple prefix of the gigabytes and gigabits. So, 1 second. First one, cache memories. What is cache memories? Cache memory is what is inside the CPU to help the processor computing faster. So most likely we have modern computer architecture. We have we have L1 caches, which is built inside the processor, and L2 caches and L3 caches. So the question is why we don't build L4, L5, L6 and keep going. The reason why is because L3, with the reason for the cache memory, it had to be closer to the processor. And actually, we have L4 caches. L4 caches is RAM, is a large storage that outside of the processor. So L3 is a limitation of it. So even though we have L4, L5, it won't increase the processability anymore. So what is the difference between L1, L2, and L3? So L1 is smaller. We can take an example of what we see in the normal CPUs. AMD. We take an example of the CPU that we can see. Normally, take an example, AMD 99050X3D. Take out general specification of it. And you can see L1 cache memory, which is 120,280 kilobytes. L3 has 16 megabytes, and L3 128 megabytes. From getting upper and upper, L1 to L3, it will increase the storage space. Okay, so and as they have more space, it can store more instructions. But the question is, L1 is the faster, L2 is the second, and L3 is the most slower in compared with L2 and L1. So even though we have more storage, but it will be slower than L2 and L1. So that's the meaning of cache memories. So it actually accessing the RAMs much more frequent than the other data, than the other storage. So if the CPU have more cache memory, it will simply just improve the overall performances. But there are fair shots of it. Next one is RAM, random access memory. It stores the data temporarily into so then the CPU can working with it. So most likely, what is stored whenever you open an application. Take an example, Microsoft Edge. So if you open Microsoft Edge, there are some small instructions and big chunks of the data, like the GUIs, icons, some scripts that longer than megabytes, so it will put it in RAM. So it's big chunks of data of the bytes. So it connect with CPU with high speed of link. So most likely, how many RAM you will have? 16 GB for now. So we check the laptop. AMD, yeah. So how many GB of RAM you will have? 16 gigabyte most likely nowadays. Okay, this one fair enough, 32. So that's how many GBs of RAM you will have. And talking about speeds. So there are different generations of RAMs. Most likely currently DDR5. So you can see the speed of DDR5, which is most likely you can reach up to 6,000 megahertz, and CL is in nanoseconds of the delays. So CL lower, it will be lower. It will be faster initializations of the RAM and of each of the surge. And 6,000 megahertz means that it will be 6,000 megahertz per second. So that's a DDR5 speed. What's the previous generation? DDR4. So, and there's actually another key value of it, which is you can see is 1.35 volt, which is it can working in under 1.35 voltage. The voltage lower is better. And as we can see, that the previous generation is DDR4. You can see, this one is 1.35 as well. So most likely DDR4 can work on 1.35 between 1.35 volts and 1.51 volt. Higher voltage will create more heat. Heat will reduce the speed of the megahertz. So here's the max of the DDR4, which it can reach up to 3,200 megahertz. And as you know, you can see the CL is lower, so the initialization searching speed of the DDR4, which is lower than DDR5. But DDR5 almost have double of the megahertz speed in it. And the other thing is DDR5 actually using 32-bit. Actually, DDR4 is using 16-bit per channel, 16-bit per channel. And DDR5 they actually have a 64-bit per channel. So usually the computer will have 2 channels and you will have 128 bits. So the other one, whenever we're buying, there's the international units for perflexing. Like 1 kilometer is 10,000 meter, and that's a perflex meanings. So whenever we go buy a SSD for 1 terabyte of SSD, you don't have 1 terabyte of SSD. So whenever you install it, after installation, what you will find out, you don't have 1 terabyte of it, right? So you don't have 1 terabyte of it. So what you will have, and you will have around 900 gigabytes. So where does it go? It's about perflex. So in here, it's showing that actually in computer storage, each of the perflex is 1024. The other one will become 100,000, 48, 576. So it means that 1024, it's 1 gigabyte. 1024 bits is 1 gigabyte. Oh yeah, 1024 bytes is 1 gigabyte of it. It's not exactly 1000. So whenever you go up, if you buy 8 terabyte, you have 7.2 terabytes actually you have. And if you buy a 6 terabyte, you actually have 5.3 terabytes you have. That's where it lost of your terabyte. So they're actually the manufacturing not lying to you, but it actually use some terabytes on it. Okay, now I give you some homework. You can take a look and search on the internet, seeing what you can find for the SSD. So I'll come and search for you. Come and search with you. Yes, that's the SSD. You can see it, right? Yes, and you can search for RAM as well. You have different generation of the RAM. You can see, right? I go get a water. You can search different generation of RAM. There are DDR4, and previously you have DDR5. And previously you have DDR3. So yeah. Yes. You can see a different RAM, right? And they're showing different RAM speed, and the voltage of the RAM is very important. Yes. So there are also different brand as well. Yeah, there are also different brand as well. Yeah. Yes. So different brand, but actually they're using the main three manufacturer from it, which is Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung for DDR5 and high speed of the RAM. Yes. You can see it from their RAM chips as well. Yes. So now I'm continuing on the next topic, where is the optical storage. So there are another different storage, which is opticals. We can read from the optical. So each of them, it has a hold and a pit, land and hold, which is hold and non-hold, pit and land, which is hold and non-hold. And how we use it to read it, we use lasers. So we use laser on the reflecting material, so then it will spinning and read the 0 and 1. Okay, the detector will read it. If it's a hole, it's 0. If it's a long, if it's a land, it's 1. Simply like that. So where are we still using the optical storage now? We're still using in Blu-ray, DVD. Or actually, the DVD have much more maximum storage. The max of the Blu-ray DVD is 50 gigabytes. And the triple layer Blu-ray can go up to 128 gigabytes. So it's a small disk, but actually can storage much more data than USB instead of USB. So the other one is generation of the DDR5, the generation of the DDR. Why we call it DDR? It stands for double date memory, means that in one clock speed, the data will read it twice. What is clock speed? Clock speed is each of the CPU clock speeds is by gigahertz. So CPU actually is much more faster. So each of the tickles, each of the tickles is 0.1 gigahertz, which is 1 hertz. Yeah, 1 hertz is 1 clock speed, so which is 3.6 billion circle per second. And during each of the one circle, the RAM will read it twice. That's why we call double date memory. So in each of the dates, it will read it twice. It will read it 2 times of the memories. So DDR5 is the current generations. What is the improvement? Speed faster, more bandwidth, and low powers. Speeds, you can see the differences in between DDR4 and DDR5, which is 2 times of the speed, simply by megahertz. And low power. Why we need low power? Doing that lack of electricity. And so low power, what's the main aim of the low power is it can be more overclocked. So the most critical enemy of overclocking is heat. So whenever the heat spread, the RAM speed, the RAM chip have to be drop down the speed. So if we can lower the power from 1.3 1.5 volt to 1.31 or 1.21, and then we can still initializing the RAM, which means that we can much more overclock the RAM. The other one is bandwidth. As we all know, our data is transferring by 0 and 1, so bandwidth is very important. So the representation of the bandwidth is by bits, which means that each of the 0 and 1 can be actually transferred. For DDR4, they actually have 16 of it can be transferred, and because they have 2 channels, each of the channel is transferred 16. So if dual channel, most likely the common computer is dual channel, and a dual channel can transfer 32 bits of the data. And DDR5 is much more faster, so it can transfer 32 bit each of the channels, and it can transfer 2 times, so which is 64 bits. And they're actually different channel in different CPU chipsets. An example. An example of the AMD consumer grade CPU. Most likely you'll see there are 4 slots, but it's in 2 channels. Channel is where actually the RAM and CPU being connected. Just take an example with any product. Processor. Rise. Search is better. Just take an example, this one. 99. Just search the previous one. So you can see in connectivity, it will say that you have PCIe. Yeah, that will explain later. It have memory channel is 2, maximum memory is 256, and 2 channel means that each of the channel can be transferred under 32 bits of the data. And here is whenever you have 4 channels, the speed will down to 3,600. So can we have more channel for the CPU? Yes, of course. Then we need to go to our thread report. So take an example of what is the thread report. An example for the reasonable price one. You can see from the connectivity, so the memory channel can go up to 8, and all of them can up to 6,400 megahertz per second. So yes, it is surely okay to add more channel to the CPU, but it will be more expensive and increase the core productivity. So the other one, so now you can go and search different CPU and tell me what is the memory channel they have. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's the different one. Yes. So how many channel this one have? Yeah, how many channel this one have? Yeah, it have 4 channel. Yes. So there are 2 series of the Threadripper. One of them is Pro, one of them is not. So it will cut down of the PCIe channels. Also, it cut down of the memory channels of it. Yes. You can search another one. For the memory, you have UDIM and RDIM. You can find out what's the differences between it. Yes. You can see there are also not only AMD, there are different CPU as well. You can take a look at it. Yes, you can search this one. Yes. Okay. Well, we still have some time. Well, we still have some time. We can take a look on. As we know, we have CPU. Besides CPU, we have GPU nowadays. And whenever we search a GPU, you see that the GPU actually is using similar VRAMs with the CPUs. Similar RAM. So what we call of the memory type is DDR. So we can find a similarity of the DDRs, which is we know that it stands for double date memory. It stands for double date memory. So the full name of the GDDR means a graphic double date memory, but it's in 7 generations. So what is the differences with graphic double date memory instead of non-graphic double date memory? So the graphic double date memory, it has a much more memory bus. So you can up to 512 bits of each data transferred. And in order to, as we all know, the signal transfer is like the signal transfer is like the heartbeat map. Yeah. So we already transferred one time in double dates, but in order to reach 512 bits, we need to transfer more times. But what I know in DDR5 is already transferred 4 times, and in DDR7 is transferred 8 times in each of the megahertz of the data. So it's still named with DDR, but actually is not double date anymore. So it can transfer in the graphic data. It can transfer the RAM. It can transfer data much more times instead of RAM. That's why when we're using some large processing, we still use GPU instead of CPUs. That's the extra ones. So the other one is CMS. NAS, so storage of the data management. First one is NAS, which stands for network technology, network attached storage. Which stands for network attached technology storage. So it will be something like this. Usually you have 4 bit, and what we put in, we can put in SSD, and we can put in magnetic. We can put in hard disk drive as well. There's another one about the hard disk drive, which we write in the beginning of the lecture slide, and then we didn't say yet. So we'll explain it later. So network storage, network attached storage, which means that you can transfer the data over internet. Most likely for the NAS is a local storage. And it can be cloud as well if you have a public IP address. So most likely you transfer data maximum in the networking speeds, which is 10 gigabits per second. And you can see it has a 4 bits, right? So what does this 4 bits do? It's doing as a RAID, RAID, redundant storage. Yeah. So it's a RAID 1. So most likely you have a RAID 1, RAID 2, and RAID 6. So what is RAID 0? Simply, you just put the data into one hard disk drive or in one volumes. What is RAID 1? You mirroring the storage. What is RAID 2? Whenever you have 3 drives, each of them, so you can take out 10%, no, 50% of the data storage as error corrections. So whenever one fails, as long as you have the other 2, they can calculate the remaining of the failure one, and it can still generating your data back. RAID 3 bi-levels, and RAID 5 is block level. So whenever the RAID go up, it means that it have a more security and you use more storage on it. So RAID 6 is a RAID. So one of the drive have been sacrificing fully for error corrections. And also, and the RAID data will be randomly distributed between each of the hard disk drive. Also, the RAID will increase the data reading and increase the data reading and loading speed, writing speeds. So as we all know, all the hard disk drive is by SATA. So we can check what's the SATA speed. Most likely it's 240 megabyte to 350. Yeah, approximately 100 and something to 300 megabytes. So now SATA 3 can go up to 600 megabyte, but it won't go up to 600 megabyte because your hard disk drive cannot go up to 600 megabytes. So because of that, and SSD will be much more faster, and 600 megabytes does not meet our needs, our daily needs. So, but in RAID, if you have 4 hard disk drives, your speed will be 4 times 600 megabytes. And you can see how much it is. Which is almost a gigabyte transfer speed per second. Okay, almost equal to SSD, but SSD will be much more faster anyway, still with 4 RAID. The other one is cloud storage. So there's so many companies that provide cloud as a services, Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, which you can allow you to access the data. You can store the data anywhere and access the data anywhere as long as you have an internet. And the data most likely will be stored in remote server, and you don't need to worry about the data loss and the backup of it like RAID. Okay, because the cloud as services will provide all of these for you. Storage hierarchy. We have discussed about the CPU registrar, which is the fast one, because it stored the instruction only for ready for executing. And L1, L3, L2 caches is store the instruction or small data chunks. And if your L1, L2, L3 caches larger, it can make the processor run faster. And there also a threshold of it. We can't keep increasing of it. And the other one is RAM. So whenever there are big chunks of the data, and we will put it in RAM. So the speciality of, and in here is aligned. 1, 2, 3 is a fast reading memory. And also they're non-volatile, they are volatile. What does that mean of volatile? Is whenever you turn off the battery of it, or whenever you turn off the power of the computer, all of this data will gone, right? All of this data will be gone. So you won't be able to have the RAM, caches, and register memories again. Okay? Just like you're storing a file in RAM and you power off the computer, everything will be gone. So go down from RAM, it will be SSD and NVMe, which is a fast reading, which is like a disk by NAND, M.2 SSD speed. It can go up to 7,000 megabytes per second. So yeah, it can, for PCIe 3, it's 3,000. PCIe 4 is up to 7,000. So if it's PCIe 5, which is double the speed, will go up to 10,800 megabytes per second, which is very, very fast. And that's what's the specialty of SSD. And yeah, and the other one is hard disk drive. We can discuss more a bit SSD, which is how SSD is work. It basically just a NAND, but much more durable NAND. The other one is how to determine the life of an SSD. Take an example. Example 990 Pro. There are 1 terabyte of it, and you won't get 1 terabyte of it. And it should be right down. Yeah, more specifications. No. No. Yeah. You can see, yeah, it can up to 7,450 because it's a PCIe 4. And the other one is PBW, which stands for warranty. So there are 5 years of a warranty. So means that this SSD will expire after 5 years. The data will not be secure anymore after 5 years. Also, 600 terabyte DPW. DPW stands for total bit written. Means that if this 1 terabyte or 4 terabyte SSD written by 600 terabyte of the data, it will void the warranty as well. That's how to determine the life of an SSD. The other one is hard disk drive. As we explained, hard disk drive. So it's by magnetic, and it's by magnetic. So magnetic strips, and they remember the data by magnetics. And it can have more storage, but the speed is much more slow. Why? It's because the hard disk drive is reading by spinning of the hard disk drive. So because it's spinning, so you can read the data slower, much more than SSD, like electricity. The other one is cloud and tape. Cloud, we have explained it. What we're using when we are using clouds, we're using cloud in data storage, and we can access anywhere, and we don't need to worry about what the data loss, because it will be responsible by the cloud services providers. So that's a key point of today. So we can do more discussions and search in your computer. Yes. So you know what is RAM, right? That's the RAM, yes. Do you have any question about this class? Yes, I can search for you. Yes. Good. Yeah. So do you know where the L3 cache is in? And why the caches can improve the performances? You can show it. You can show it in the lecture content. Yes. There it is. Yes. That's why the caches can improve the performances, because it can read the construction faster for the CPU. Yes. You know why?
The difference between MIB and
One is megabit, one is megabyte. So actually megabyte. So megabit is bit stands for 0 and 1. like 1 bit. Megabyte stands for 80, like chain of the which is the standard. So 80 and 1 is stand for 256, which is a standard byte. So whenever we go by some networking devices, or you buy motherboard, so it will write down, sometimes write down that 10 gigabit. 10 gigabit is actually slower than 5 gigabytes per second, which is 10 gigabit stands for 10 billion of 0 and 1. But 5 gigabit stands for 5 times 8 times 0 and 1. So which is faster, 5 gigabytes faster than 10 gigabits. Because bit is stands for only 1, 0, and 1. And byte is a chunk, is a standard one, which is 256. Yeah. Okay. I think you fully understand of this class. Hopefully, I will see you in next one. We can turn on the light now, and I'll see you in the next class.
See you next class.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharing and